If you think all river cruise lines are equal, then you've clearly never been on a river cruise with Tauck. Hey there, travel lovers. It's your trusted cruise and Tauck tour and Africa safari expert Shawn Power here. And today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is river cruising. If you follow my videos or you've been a client of mine for a while, you'll know that I love river cruises. I've done almost 100 cruises over the years, but 19 of those have been river cruises. So that's one of my favorite ways to travel. I've personally booked over $30 million worth of river cruises for my clients. So I really know these well. I've been on all the different rivers all around the world. And, I get a lot of feedback from my clients and I see who people, go with again and again and who they enjoy the most and who they rave about and who they have some complaints about. And I really see it all. And time again, year after year, I have more of my clients who travel with Tauck River Cruises than any of the other lines. And I also find that, I have the most repeat clients, the highest percentage of repeat clients. So what I want to talk about today, because this is a question I get all the time. I mean, people say, Shawn, a lot of people find me on my videos and through my website and, they're first time clients and they ask me, who's the best river cruise line to go with? And they want to know, who's got the top quality, who's the highest quality out there. So like I tell them, Tauck literally is the one who I book the most for my clients. It's who I get the most repeat clients with. And I do think there's 6 reasons why, why that is, which is what I want to cover today. And, I've been on Tauck multiple times myself. So this is firsthand experience from me and also the feedback I get from my clients. So, the number one reason why I think people like Tauck a lot is by far, it's their shore excursions. We get on a plane and we travel thousands of miles to, somewhere like Europe. And, we do it to see new things, to have new experiences, to see new sights. And there's nothing more disappointing. We've all been there than when you go over there and maybe you're stuck in crowds or you're with a guide who's, not very knowledgeable about, what they're showing you. Maybe they don't have to speak great English or, they're playing on their phone. There's all kinds of things. But basically the bottom line is with Tauck, they do their tours differently. And what I mean by that is really 2 things. So number one is I find that they're more exclusive. So again and again, I mean, I've personally done, 12 trips with Tauck between their river cruises and their land tours and their ocean cruises. And it doesn't matter what Tauck trip I do, there's always some exclusive events that you're gonna, get during your trip. So for example, when I've done river cruises with Tauck, the first one I did was on the Danube River. I remember going places and I've done other videos about this so you can get into more details, but just some highlights here. In Budapest, I remember going to the Academia Club and having a private, welcome reception and dinner. I mean, beautiful event. Going to the Budapest Opera House the next day, being serenaded by the 2 headliners of the opera, 10 in the morning. I mean, I'm sure they weren't very happy with us, but it's such a treat for us to, for them to get up and come out in the morning and do that for, exclusively for Tauck. I mean, it was an amazing experience. Then we go to Vienna and we go to a private palace where, again, just for Tauck guests, they give us this beautiful classical concert. I've went with other companies and, you go with the public, you got to pay extra for it. There's hundreds of people in this, auditorium. I remember being back in the 30th row, whereas with Tauck, I had front row seats because, again, it was only, exclusively for Tauck people. Such a great event. I remember going to Prague, having a private welcome reception and farewell dinner in Prague Castle at a palace that it's literally a private palace. The Tauck family, is the family who owns the palace, and it's just a special event. I remember going to a Baroque library in Prague where basically we were, and this was like the Sistine Chapel. I mean, wait till you see this place with the ceilings, and I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous with the, the paintings all over the place. And we were on the inside of this Baroque library, looking out at people looking back in at us over the velvet rope. So we were on the inside with Tauck, everyone and what else was on the outside taking pictures. And I did go back to Prague, later on down the road years later, and I kind of did the outside thing, and I had maybe 30 seconds to take a couple of pictures. It was a totally different experience. And this is just like the Danube cruise that I'm talking about. I've also been in France with Tauck where we went to Versailles. And we went to the Queen's Hamlet, which is like the Queen's getaway from the King, when they were out to the palace years ago. And we go to this little place. It's absolutely gorgeous. It looked like a Beauty and the Beast setting. And we got there an hour and a half before it even opened to the public. Actually, I think it was even 2 hours. And, there was only like 12 of us who went there because everyone else in our group went to Versailles Palace. But, I'd been there before, so I went to the Queen's Hamlet. But point being, this was a private, tour for like 12 people. And we had the whole place to ourselves. I mean, quite the experience. Later that week, we go to Monet's Gardens in Giverny to see the water lilies. An hour and a half before it opens to the public, we go there. Now, if you've ever been to Giverny or you know anything about it, it gets crowded. It's hard to take good pictures. But here we are, early in the morning before it opens to the rest of the world. I listed some other ones here where I haven't even been yet with Tauck, but I remember going to the Parliament building in Bucharest with another company, and they took us up and they said, hey, look at that beautiful building, isn't it fabulous? Whereas Tauck takes you in and they have a private gala, again, a private dinner in there, like a private VIP tour, just a fabulous event. I've also been to some chateaus, with Tauck over the years, some of the French chateaus. Again, private events, you can't even really pay to go into. Again, Tauck's a 100-year-old company, so they have a lot of access that other companies don't. So again, you can see all this on Tauck's site. When you look at each itinerary, it will show you what kind of exclusive things they have. But the point is, there's always something. Like I said, I've been on a dozen trips with Tauck. There's not one time I've been with them where there wasn't something really cool that was really exclusive, and it's a real highlight. So this is what people like about Tauck, is they know when they go somewhere, they're going to get access and they're going to see things, really as good as you possibly can. I mean, it is really fabulous. Now, the other thing that I find with Tauck is that basically their tours are more inclusive. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. As I mentioned, I've been to Budapest. I've actually been to Budapest a few times now with different river cruise lines. And when I went with other lines, basically what happened is that, I remember going up to the Fisherman's Bastion. So if you've been to Budapest, this is up on the hill. It's where Matthias Church is. Beautiful views of Budapest. It's an absolutely gorgeous area. Everyone goes there. But I go up with a river cruise line, and basically they take us up and they say, oh, look, there's the beautiful Matthias Church. And over there, because they said it's beautiful inside, so they said over there is where you can basically go buy your tickets to go in. I was thinking, okay, that's great. They take us up there, but don't take us in after flying thousands of miles, but that's just the way it was. And then, afterwards they say, look over there, that's where the best views are of Budapest. And it was this platform, and they said over there is where you can buy your tickets to go up top and have a look. And I was thinking, wow, this is really great. I'm happy I flew all this way. And then they literally gave us 3 hours, and they said, okay, now you got a few hours to do your own thing, go to the church, go to the viewing platform, go get something to eat. And that was our tour of Fisherman's Bastion, which is supposed to be one of the highlights in Budapest. Now, 4 months later, I go back with Tauck. We go up to the exact same area. We go up, the guide shows us around. They say, see the beautiful Matthias Church? It's absolutely gorgeous inside. Come on over, let's go on in. And, we walk in past the crowds and it was all paid for. Then we come out and they say, look over there, that's where you're going to have the best views of Budapest. Let's go over and check it out. Of course, we go over, Tauck had already paid. We go up and we see the best views in Budapest. And then they take us to a local restaurant for a beautiful Hungarian lunch. And when it was all said and done, I think we had about an hour to kill afterwards to do some shopping or whatever. So the point is, again, not only does Tauck have some exclusive things, but even when you're doing a basic tour, very, very often it's going to be more inclusive than the competitors. So I want you to think about those things because, again, yes, some of these companies look cheaper. I'll put underneath here, I did a Viking versus Tauck video, and I even showed Viking, hey, they're a lot cheaper, but literally on the Danube that I just talked about, Viking charges for 85% of their shore excursions. So yes, they include one in each port, but it's super basic. Most people don't do that one. They want to do the more inclusive ones. But again, you got to pay for 85% of them. So it's a big deal. So like I said, with Tauck, they're going to be more exclusive and more inclusive. So something to keep in mind. So that's number one. I mean, when people go with Tauck, I think it's the number one reason they do it because they know they're going to see a place better, which makes a huge difference, and it's what we're all going for. Now, the second thing that I feel makes a huge difference on Tauck is how many people they put on the ships. So basically, if you look at these ships, let's look at a Rhine River cruise. So you could have a Tauck ship sitting there. You could have a Viking long ship sitting there. You could have an Amma ship sitting there. You could have an Avalon ship sitting there. They're all next to each other. And you're going to see really quickly, these are identical size. They're all 443 square feet. They're all the same height. And they have to be because they got to go underneath the same bridges. They go through the same locks. So none of them are, any bigger than the other ones. So think about this. They're all the same, exact same size. But Tauck puts 130 people on board at the most. So 130, like 65 rooms. The other guys like Amma and Avalon are right around 160. I think Avalon's 166, Amma's 162, and Viking puts on 190 people. So point being, same space, more people. So right away, everyone gets a bigger room on Tauck. Like if you look at Tauck's rooms, I think it's either 80, I believe it's 80% of them are 225 square feet or bigger. Again, if you look at someone like Viking, 50% of the rooms are 150 square feet or smaller. So on Tauck right away, you're gonna get a nicer room, but also because it's the same size that you're sharing, on these ships compared to, 190 people versus 130, you have more personal space on board. It's not going to feel as crowded, especially when you're in the lounge. Like when everyone goes to the lounge for the briefing at around 6 o'clock in the evenings. You know, I've seen some ships where you can hardly get everyone sat down. There's plenty of space on Tauck though, because again, there's only 130 for that same size space. Now, the other thing that the small size means for for you is two things. Number one, the crew is just going to get to know you better, because again, they need to get to know 60 or 30 to 60 less people, so they really do get to know you better. And again, I've been on all these river cruises myself, and I've seen the difference personally, and I do find it's just a little bit more personal with the staff on Tauck. But also, what's the most important thing, at least in my mind, and this is what's important to my clients, is again when you go on those tours, because again, it's all about the shore excursions, at least in my mind and my clients. Is what we're going for. We're going to see things. We're going to experience things. It's less crowded on these tours. So again, if you take a Viking, there's 190 people on board. They'll, if they have a bus, they'll have 4 buses. If they have some kind of bus tour, and they'll have about 45 to 48 to 49, 50 people per tour. I was in Rouen recently with Tauck, and I was looking at the other guys, and they all have their flags, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you go there. You'll see they all got their names, whether it's Tauck or who. Actually, Tauck doesn't usually use flags because it's a small enough group that they can, everyone kind of knows who's who. But when you get 40 to 50, they use the flags. And I was literally counting in the other groups, and there was like 40 to 50 people in those groups. With Tauck, there was 21 of us on the particular one I was on in Rouen. So again, less people on the ship, bigger rooms, more personalized service. But again, more importantly, when you're on the shore tours, is going to be less people. So again, that means if you're going in and out of a church, it just takes less time. If you're taking a washroom break, it takes less time. So you're not wasting as much time. You have more time to basically do the sightseeing and again do everything that you came for. So again, something to think about. I mean, it's a fabulous thing when you're traveling with less people, and I think anyone's going to have a hard time arguing with that. The smaller the group, the better. So that's the second thing. Everything is smaller. Smaller, fewer crowds on board. We'll call it on Tauck. Now, the third thing with Tauck is they're truly all-inclusive. Everyone says they're all-inclusive. All the other companies, their literature says we're all-inclusive. And look, they are very inclusive. Don't get me wrong. Again, I've been on them all, but they're not all-inclusive. When I say Tauck is all-inclusive, I mean they're all-inclusive. So, as soon as you land at the airport in Europe, they're going to pick you up and they're going to bring you to the ship or to the hotel, wherever you're going. They're going to do the same thing on the other end. They don't care if you buy their airfare or not. I have other videos where I say don't buy the cruise line's airfare, no matter who you travel with, Tauck, Viking, whoever, it's always overpriced. I mean, I've been on, like I said, almost 100 cruises. I always check the price of the airfare with the cruise line, and then I always buy it directly from the airlines for cheaper. So I never suggest buying your air through the cruise line. It's almost never a better deal. But Tauck doesn't care whether you buy their airfare or not. They're going to provide the transfers. Other companies, they're not like that. They'll say, okay, if you buy your airfare, we'll do the transfers, and then they're group transfers. So again, just to give you a bit of perspective, I've been with other companies years ago where I took their transfer, not because I took their flights, but I just happened to buy their transfer. And you'll go to the airport and you could be sitting there. It even says in a lot of the literature, you might have to wait for 1 to 2 hours. So what it is that they wait for planes to come in. They want to fill up a big motor coach. So they wait for, here's 10 couples on one plane, another bunch of couples come a half hour later, maybe an hour later. And you just literally sit at the airport, and then they're like, okay, now we got 20 or 30 people, and then they go on their way. It'll drive you crazy after taking an overnight flight and being very, very tired. With Tauck though, and again, I've done a dozen trips with them, almost, I think 9 out of 12 times, my transfers have been completely private. And the most I've ever seen on one vehicle was 6 of us. It was like 3 couples. This was in Africa. We all landed off of this flight in the Kilimanjaro. So, it made sense to just put us all in one small van. But point being, the other companies use coaches for their transfers. Tauck does private transfers, when they have to, and they might put you in, like I said, with, 5 or 6 other people or something. And again, they also will do transfers like from train stations. So it's not just the airport. They don't care even if you fly in a few days early. They'll still pick you up and bring you to their hotel. I actually did a whole video on this. Again, I'll put it underneath. But I mean, like I said, very inclusive with their transfers. Also with a pre-hotel, there's almost no reason for you not to get an extra hotel night, or at least one hotel night if there's not one included in the cruise in the first place. But there's almost no reason to get one or to not get one with Tauck. Reason being, I mean, for myself, because I do a lot of business with Tauck, I can always get a free hotel night for a new to Tauck client. So someone who's never done any trip with Tauck ever, I can always get you a free night as long as it's available. And that's the problem sometimes when people book late, the hotels are booked up. But as long as the hotel's available, I can get it for free. If you're a past Tauck guest, you know that you got to book by July 31st every year to get a free hotel for the next year. So for example, if you want to do a 27 river cruise, you got to book by July 31st, 26. And as a past Tauck client, I know you guys know that. But point being is, you can almost always get an extra hotel night. Again, no one does this, with the other companies. You're talking every tip is included. They tip every bus driver, they tip every guide, they tip every bellhop, they tip every staff member on board, they tip all the guides. When I've been with the other companies, hundreds of dollars per week, is easy to, to spend when it comes to tips. I was just on a river cruise with one of Tauck's competitors. They wanted, I think it was 145 euros for the week for the staff per person, so myself and my partner. They wanted another 35 euros for the cruise director. You got to tip every guide. We had to tip our drivers. When we had a driver, we had to tip our transfer drivers. You're tipping everybody, it'll drive you crazy. But again, Tauck includes all this. Same with drinks. When you're on board the ships, a lot of companies say, here's wine, beer, and soft drinks at lunch and dinner. But, if you want something in the afternoon or in the evening, or you want some hard liquor, you got to pay for all that. Again, with Tauck, they include everything. And I remember, 3-4 months ago, I was in France with Tauck on a river cruise, and we were drinking Veuve Clicquot as the champagne. And, that's not an inexpensive champagne. Again, they weren't serving, this no-name stuff. really nice brands and stuff. So again, everything is included on Tauck, like I said, from transfers to, almost always a pre-hotel, again, Wi-Fi, tips, and don't forget every single tour. Remember I said earlier, Viking, they're charging for 85% of their tours on the Danube, and every company, charges for tours. In some situations, I've had to pay for the Vienna concert with other companies. I've had to pay to do, certain wine tastings with other companies. Tauck, there is no tours that you can actually pay extra money for. It's all included in the price when you do the river cruises. Also, some simple things as well, like I remember going with one other company one time, and we were in Budapest, and we stayed at this riverside hotel, and literally they had us in the back of the hotel facing an alley. And when we checked in, they're like, hey, for 50 euros more, you can get a river view. Well, of course, I wanted the river view. Again, flying all that way, and it's a gorgeous, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when you get to Budapest. It's absolutely beautiful there. But again, point being, I really begrudged having to pay that extra 50 euros at the time I did it. But, is that the experience you want? Again, with Tauck, if there's something to see, or, with a hotel, in my experience, they always give you the better view. I literally went to Tauck in India to the Taj Mahal, and every one of us had Taj Mahal views. So again, they're not sparing expenses. And this is why they are more money up front, because the experience is very, very different. So again, everything is included with Tauck. Very, very, very inclusive experience. So that's the third thing that I think makes the difference, is the all-inclusiveness. Now, the next thing, which is probably going to be hard to understand if you've never been on one of these river cruises, but I'll do my best to explain it. So the fourth thing is that you get a lot more attention when you're on a Tauck river cruise. So if you've ever done a river cruise, you'll know that they've got all the staff, and then they have one cruise director. So the cruise director is the guy or the gal who basically, they run all the tours. They're making sure they're coordinating with the local guides. They're making sure everything's on time. The bus drivers show up on time. If you want to make changes, you go to him or her, and they'll make changes. Let's just put it this way. They are a busy person. If there's issues, I find a lot of people go to them. They're just run ragged. You can see they're super tired during the week, and they don't have a lot of spare time. I can promise you that. Now, also, they don't never have time to get off the ships, because again, they're one person, and there might be 3 or 4 tours on the go, so they can't go off and go on 3 or 4 tours. They're one person, and again, they have a lot of work to do on the ship. Tauck does things very differently, and they're the only company who does this. So they have 4 cruise directors on board. They actually call them Tauck directors. The reason they call them that is because most of these are employees of Tauck. They're not contractors. I've seen other companies where they were literally on one river cruise line one week, and literally another one, on the next week, they didn't know the ship well, they didn't know the itinerary well. It wasn't good. Whereas with Tauck, and again, 12 trips with them, they basically have these directors who, I've met some who've been with Tauck for 10 years, 20 years, one time 27 years. So a lot of these people stick with Tauck for years and years. They know the itineraries well. They'll do them week after week after week. They're not necessarily moving from ship to ship as a lot of the other companies are. But again, they have 4 of these people. So one people acts like they do on all the other river cruise lines. They stay on board, they run their tours, they make sure everything is going well. But the other 3, and this is what makes a difference, for one, They're hanging out on the ship during the days if you're sailing, so you can ask him or her questions. Because again, you're going to learn. You're going to check out things in the country that you're visiting, and they can kind of fill in all the blanks and tell you everything that you want to know. But then what happens is they also go on all the tours with you. So again, these 3 Tauck directors will go off on the walking tours or the bike rides or whatever it is. And I can't tell you how much of a difference this makes. Again, I've been on almost 100 cruises, and I've seen this again and again. I've also booked almost $100 million worth of travel for my clients, and most of that has been cruises. And the number one complaint I get from people again and again is shore excursions. And I'm talking even if they go with the best cruise lines in the world with the oceans, you're talking Regent, Silver Sea, Seabourn, Crystal, Oceania, it doesn't matter. I've had issues with shore excursions with some of these companies, and so have many, many of my clients. And the reason is no one ever gets off the ship. So what I mean is they just send you off with the local guides and they hope for the best. So whether these guides speak good English or not, who knows? Whether they know what they're talking about, who knows? But that's just not the case with Tauck, because the directors are going off the ship. The local guides know that Tauck people are coming, so they make sure to send their best guides. There's many times I've been on a Tauck tour where they say, hey, I'm the owner of this local tour guide company here. They're always sending their best people. So again, if you've cruised a lot, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. It's not unusual to have a bad tour guide and a bad experience, but with Tauck, it just never happens, because not only do you have your local guide, you also have your Tauck director, which makes all the difference in the world. And also because you have 4 of those people, if things go wrong, I've seen some really interesting situations that you just can't have happen with the other companies. So for example, just in July when I was in France, my partner, she had really bad allergies. We had come from Iceland, so it was cold up there, and we were up in Norway in the Arctic and Iceland, the whole thing. Next thing you know, we're in France where it's 100 degrees. So her allergies were acting up, and she had a really tough time with it. So here we are in the middle of a very small town in France. I don't have allergies. I think it's Claritin or something like that she was using, and she ran out of it. So anyway, we had to go get some more Claritin. And here we are in this small town in France where no one spoke English, but the tour director left the walking tour we were on. She came with us, translated for my partner, got her medication. She goes back to the ship, takes it. She feels better that night. Point being, with the other companies, all you've got is a local guide. Now, they can't leave your group of 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 people and go into the pharmacy and hang out for 15 or 20 minutes. But Tauck can do that. So again, it's just something to think about. I've also seen Tauck where, I know one time one of my clients had to go to the hospital out of the blue. One of the guides were able to help them. So again, this is just something, hopefully you never have a situation where you need this, but I can promise if you have something unusual like this, you're going to appreciate that Tauck has 3 other people that can spare a little bit of manpower that the other ones can. Because again, the cruise director and other companies can't get off the ship. So like I said, you just get way more personal attention on Tauck. And even with these guides, I remember being in Budapest one time, one of the guys, he was like probably 35, and there was a bunch of us who wanted to get extra exercise in. So like during the free time, one day he took us on a hike up the Parliament, the Budapest Castle or Budapest Parliament or whatever it was. Another time, I think it was in Bratislava, he took us on an extra bike ride. So again, like you can't do that with other companies because again, they only have one person who can't get off the ship. So it's a really big difference, at least in my experience. So that's the 4th thing. You just get a lot more attention on Tauck because of the 4 cruise directors instead of 1. Now, last couple of things that I find my clients really appreciate. This one is not going to affect a lot of people, but Tauck is really good for families. So like I have a lot of people where grandma and grandpa want to buy a cruise for their kids, their adult kids, and then their grandkids, because rather than give them money, they want to have a great memories. And I've done this many times for my clients over the years. So they actually have some specific river cruises for families. Now, again, if you're a Tauck river cruiser, don't think you're going to go on board and see all these families because these are specific dates and they're kind of blocked off for families. But point being, if you happen to have a family, this is a really good thing. Viking, for example, you've got to be 18 or over to go on a river cruise. So that probably sounds great. And, maybe it is if you just don't want kids around. But if you want to bring the, grandkids, you can't even go on Viking, for example. But you can with Tauck. But again, not just a normal Tauck cruise. Most times you're going to go on the specific family one. So don't worry about it if you don't want kids around. I mean, I've been on multiple Tauck cruises and I don't know, I can say I haven't seen many kids, a couple here and there. And that's the same with their competitors as well, besides Viking, who doesn't have kids at all. But the point is, if you have a family and you want to do a multi-generation trip, look at Tauck because, again, they have some things where they've set up the itinerary for the whole family so that whether you're 90 or 50 or 10 or whatever, they do have, activities for everybody. So that's number 5, is that they're great for families if you're looking at something like that. And then the last thing I think that makes a big difference with Tauck is that, I kind of like to say they always do the right thing. So what I mean by that is, look, I've been in this industry now for 20 years. And again, I've booked almost $100 million worth of travel for my clients. And I've been through things like COVID. I mean, an absolute mess for us in the travel industry. Millions and millions of dollars worth of, me personally, I think I canceled something like $7 million worth of, travel during COVID. And a lot of companies, it was really bad. They wouldn't give my clients back their money. We had a couple of companies go out of business. But Tauck, again, they're a 100-year-old company. So they've been through wars and depressions and 9/11 and you name it. So they really know what to do in these situations. And also Tauck too, they don't own things. They don't own ships and that kind of stuff. They contract, like their river cruises, even though they look like a Tauck river cruise, they're actually owned by a family, the Skilla family I think they're out of the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. And Tauck just leases those for, 5 years at a time or something like that. So that, when things go wrong during COVID and those kind of situations, they're not having to pay everyone like the other companies are. So point being, during COVID, Tauck was refunding my clients within 1 to 2 weeks. The fastest I saw any other company doing it was like 3 to 4 months. I mean, again, it was a bit of a mess. Some wouldn't refund at all. And also with Tauck too, I find like if things go wrong, they don't have these policies. With some companies that are public, and there's a lot of them out there, they're so big, it's hard to kind of get anything done or to get any exceptions made. But again, with Tauck, I mean, they're a family company. So, I personally know the CEO. I know the president. I know the VP of sales. I'm actually on Tauck's advisory board myself. Now, don't get me wrong, Tauck doesn't pay me to do that, and they don't pay me to do these videos. I just choose to sell a lot of Tauck because my clients love it and go again and again. And because I do so much business with Tauck, they want me on their advisory board to, give them advice of, how to make things better. But point being, I have all the contacts at Tauck, and when I've seen things go wrong, which is almost never, they literally will call you or like email you like immediately. Like, I've never seen it more than a day. I've seen other companies within 2, 3, 4 weeks, you still haven't heard back if there's an issue. So again, like I said, I like to call that they kind of do the right thing because they take care of their clients if anything goes wrong. And also during times like, COVID, they're giving people refunds if they can't deliver their product and all that kind of stuff. Even if there's water level issues, which really doesn't happen very often, less than 5% at a time. But Tauck, like I've seen them offer refunds up until the day before. Other companies say, well, look at our contract. It says that, we may not be able to sail and, we'll put you on a bus and they kind of, relate back to their contract. So, which is not a good thing, So point being, Tauck does the right thing, at least in my experience. So again, let's see if we can wrap it up here. So like I said, there's 6 reasons why I find my clients really, really like going with Tauck, on their river cruises. Again, number 1, by far, the most important thing is they just do the excursions better. They're going to be more exclusive and more inclusive. Number 2, like I said, Tauck goes with smaller groups. 130 people on board is the maximum that they'll have on board. Compared to their competitors, who'll have 160, 190, and again, same size ships, so bigger rooms with Tauck. And more importantly, when you do these tours, there's going to be less people on the Tauck tour, which gives you more time with your guide, and you move around a little bit faster and those kind of things. So that's number 2. Again, number 3, Tauck is literally, truly all-inclusive. I mean, every tip, every drink, every shore excursion, every transfer, pre-hotel if you book early enough, or like I said, if you're new to Tauck, it doesn't matter when you book with me, as long as the hotel's available, I'll get it for free. So again, lots of inclusions with Tauck that you just won't get with the other guys. Number 4, you get more attention on Tauck because again, 4 tour directors or cruise directors instead of 1. It makes a big difference in my experience. Number 5, like I said, if you're interested in taking your family, 3 generations possibly, something like that, Tauck can take care of you there. And then number 6, if things go wrong, which in my experience, they really hardly ever do. Again, I work with many companies out there. 40% of my business is with Tauck these days, but that's still a lot of, like I do millions of dollars of business with the other companies. And the point is that if things go wrong, no one handles it better than Tauck in my experience, which is why I choose to work with them, because I want my clients to have as less hassles as possible. It's as simple as that. So anyway, I hope that gave you some good information today. Again, if you're looking for a company who gives you immersive experiences and everything's included in the upfront price, and if you want to be with the smallest groups as possible, and you want that peace of mind knowing if things that go wrong, if things go wrong, they're going to take care of you. I do think Tauck is the best in the river cruise market. So any other questions, just leave me a comment or go to ShawnPower.com, fill out my contact form, and just shoot me an email. And beyond that, you know, if you want to subscribe to my next video, you can do that in the probably a pop-up came up here. And beyond that, I'll talk to you in the next video, and you have a great rest of the day. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.